Hi everybody, this is Professor Ian. Welcome to week, 11? Week 11 of the course. This is my usual Monday video. Talk about last week, talk about this week. I'll try to keep it short. So last week we started the novel, Symptoms of Being Human. Great conversation. Everybody seems to be enjoying the book, so that's always good to see. I did promise you that it's a pretty fun read. It's interesting. A lot of people were interested from the beginning. It starts with that, provocative question, am I a boy or a girl? And a lot of people like the way that we don't really know a lot about Riley, and there was a lot of interest in okay, who's Dr. Ann? What happened before? What's going on? Right? The author does a really good job of creating this, interest in our main character, and you want to know what they went through before, and it's doled out gradually. By the end of chapter 9, you know a bit more about Riley, but there's still some things to fill in, and then there's other characters that are starting to pick up interest too. So, in the kind of sense of the writing tension of the first 9 chapters, Garvin does an excellent job of piquing our interest. So one thing I want to address, I sent out an email about this, and I left some messages in Perusal about this, is that we don't know if Riley's a boy or a girl yet, right? I'm not going to spoil the novel and tell you whether we find out at all, but we don't know if Riley's a boy or a girl as of now, so we have to use gender neutral pronouns. They, them, their is preferred, so please try to use those from now on. It's tough, right, because we live in a society that really does want us to slot people in different categories, and depending on different scenes, you do read Riley differently, right? And Riley herself reads themselves differently. So even I'm tripping over the pronouns too. It's we live in a society where it is very much categorizing people, right? Everybody has to fit into a slot. So just try to watch that in your comments on Perusal and the discussion forums and whatnot. So anyways, a lot of people like the first 9 chapters. They could really relate to Riley's position as a new kid in school, that anxiety that one feels. There was a lot of discussion about uniforms and how that stifles creativity and self-expression. A lot of people were commenting on the scene at the end of I think it's chapter 1 where Riley is called It, right? And this is a very powerful scene, and this ties back with some of the other things we've read, specifically Beyond Trans, that introduction where it's the scene with the bus driver and on the bus. And a trans person is called It, and it's this, we talked about that very powerful dehumanization that comes with using that word It. So Riley goes through the same thing, and you can just imagine how crushing that would be as a person, to be degraded in that sense. What else were people talking about? There was a discussion about the music. Music plays a big role in this book. If you watch that video about Jeff Garvin, you'll see that he was I don't think he is anymore, a professional musician, played with a touring band. So music is very important to the author, and I think music is important to all of us. I know there's certainly times in my life where music has played a huge role in emotional support or helping me express, deal with, process emotions, that kind of thing. So I hope you're following along with some of the music too, because some of it's really good. The Pixies' "Where's My Mind" is a classic of rock, and everybody should know that one. We in the first 9 chapters we get a lot of discussion of blogging, both the good and the bad, right? It seems like Riley is maybe starting to discover a community, a supportive community for themselves, but we're also starting to see maybe some of the dangers of that, right? The internet isn't this utopic place where you're free from the constraints of real life, right? We all know that your online persona can be traced back, and sometimes that can have negative consequences. So we're going to see how that develops in the novel. There was a discussion about that feeling of knowing, right? When Riley is reflecting on when they first learned about gender fluidity and some of these ideas, right? And I think that's a powerful moment for someone in that position, but I think we can all relate to that too, right? Anybody who's struggled with, how do I fit in with this situation, this context, my family, my friends, my community, whatever, and then they find this identity that helps them, become comfortable with themselves. And being a teenager is all about this, trying to get that sense of knowing. It's probably much more life-changing for someone like Riley, I would imagine, but we can all relate to this. There was some good discussion about that. And then there was a lot of discussion about Riley's encounters with Beck, right? And that's really interesting how Riley also is unsure about, how to refer to Beck's gender, and, misgenders Beck at first. And that is that really interesting thing. And this relates back again to, we live in a society where gender is like boy or girl, right? Even if you don't feel comfortable with that dynamic, with that binary, you're still in the system. You're still going to be influenced by this. So it's just a reminder of how powerful I think that's the schemata of gender that we use in our society is. That someone like Riley, who is living this, exploring different terminology and more comfortable with expressing themselves in this way, still is prone to making these gaffes. Anyways, great conversations. Keep up this week. Flipgrid, some people pointed out some excellent scenes you could use in your papers. There are some great ways that Garvin tries to explain and explore what gender fluidity is. That male-female compass that Riley talks about in chapter 4. And then in chapter 7, Riley talks about the X-ray vision and, gender as internal versus sex as external. Right, so there's some great metaphors that you might want to think about in your paper. Those are great ways of explaining what gender fluidity might feel like for someone. Some other people talk about in the Flipgrid Riley's description of anxiety. Right, one of the options for your paper is to talk about something that you go through that people don't understand. So that could be it. Right, a lot of people don't understand anxiety. If you've never been through anxiety, you probably don't understand it the same way. So that could be a way into the paper. Or people were talking about how Riley's parents are trying to figure them out, right? Trying to slot them into different categories, and that could be something you talk about in your paper. To talk about that experience and the kind of problems with that. So people were talking about the scenes with Derek Yu, right? This, I think, crush that Riley had. It's not really made overt for us, but Riley does seem to be interested in this Derek guy in a more personal way, I guess. But we've all been rejected, right? So this is a universal experience you could think about for your paper. And of course, some people talked about the scene with meeting Beck again, right? And Riley's misgendering of Beck, and how this just underscores this idea that, gender is such a powerful binary system that it's hard for anybody to really, fully escape it sometimes, or at least to avoid falling in the pit trap sometimes. Anyways, that was what we did last week. This week, we are continuing our discussion of the novel, the next 9 chapters. Same thing, 3 chapter chunks in perusal, Flipgrid to reflect on it. We'll also have a brainstorming session to help us really start moving towards that third paper. And we'll work on MLA citation, because your third paper needs to use proper MLA citation. You're going to be using at least one source, which is Symptoms of Being Human, and then you might use other sources too. Okay, so I just wanted to mention, I marked your discussion forums, great stuff. That's, that It Gets Better project. I love that project. It's so, it is so uplifting, and it's this great positive community for people who need these resources, and just a positive influence in the world, right? If we're all just more accepting, I think everybody's gonna be happier. But so it's good to see everybody engaging with that site. I'm marking essay number 2. I'm working on those this week. I still have a big pile to get through, but I am working through those. Some people have their feedback already. I'm doing written comments this time, so look for those. And that's about it. If you have any questions or concerns, please do email me or come by my office hours. Thank you very much.